what got me into lifting. That was many moons ago. I did judo in high school. Competed in that all through. At that time, I think, like I competed at 178. So I'm 6'1", or not 6'1", sorry, 6'0", 6'0" and a half technically. I was like 178, so I was basically a string bean, right? So I was getting thrown around by guys that are like 5'8", 178, right? So when I got done with high school, I just started lifting in my college weight room, um, just to get stronger because I knew I was getting thrown around. Eventually, I ended up liking that more than judo, just because you can just go lift whenever you want to. You don't have to worry about coordinating with people and all that. Just kind of lifted all throughout college, and just really the iron bug just got me. Um, that was back in the day, so the internet was around, but it wasn't this ubiquitous thing that you have now, where like you do anything, you just think, okay, first thing I do, I'm gonna whip out my smartphone, I'm gonna Google it, right? So it's just kind of some monkey see, monkey do stuff. I knew about bench press because everybody knows bench press, so I worked on bench press. I didn't even know about squats and deadlifts to start with. I just kind of copied what I saw people doing. If in the modern day, if I'd been benching the way I did then, I'd be on gym fails, and everybody would be making these mockery videos of it because it would be considered horrible by today's standards. Like I would do, to start off with, let me just share. I think the first time I benched, I got trapped under less than my body weight, had to get rescued by a soccer player. So it's not like I was and I was pretty fit. I could do a lot of push-ups, but I was pretty weak. So it's not like I started out as some kind of phenomenon of strength. I had a good base of push-ups, but yeah, like I said, I got trapped under less than my body weight and had to be rescued by a soccer player, and that was not cool. But kept coming back. My form was probably what would be considered terrible now. I kind of picked the weight that I wanted to hit, and then I tried to work on depth. So I would start off like coming down just a little bit, and then see if I could get that weight a little bit farther
That's
down.
a weird way to do it.
Yeah, so I was that guy that wanted to be able to bench 185, 225, and was just doing like half reps. But I knew I had to go full depth, so I eventually got there, and got to 225 fairly quickly. Actually touching my chest. I still hadn't figured out squats and deadlifts at that point. But eventually I bought Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, learned about all that good. It's actually a very good intro. He was a golden era guy, but he had his roots in the silver era. He recommends cleaning your presses, all that stuff. So that was a good introduction. Started doing, a little bit better training. So yeah, that was kind of my start.
Cool, man. And how did that evolve into the stuff that you're doing now? Because now all the videos you post on Instagram, do you even go to a gym anymore? Is it just you and a barbell?
No, just me and a barbell. So what ended up happening? I guess I'll just continue. Yeah, so basically throughout college, I ended up getting pretty strong by the end. I think my best numbers in the first 4 to 5 years were like 600 conventional deadlift, like a really, really, balanced 385 bench press. I did a strict, almost military press with, I think 230 at a 230-pound body weight, clean and press. And the military press isn't just a strict press. It's like ramrod straight with your heels touching. It's not just any kind of press where you're not using your legs. I might have bent back just a little bit, no leg drive, but pretty close to a military press. Anyway, did a 500 or 505 back squat. Can't remember which. So I think it was either 500 or 505. Anyway, so fairly good lifts. But then I just kind of stagnated because I was pushing really hard. I got through the beginner, intermediate, late intermediate stages fairly quickly just because I was pushing really hard, but then kind of ran into a wall, and I stagnated really for years, for a very long time. I was kind of, coming back to my peak, falling off, coming back, falling off, never really getting past it until COVID lockdown. At that time, I'd been working out at Gold's Gym in Venice, which is a very cool gym, actually. I was enjoying it, but yeah, then we had COVID, and all I had was a barbell. I had a Rogue deadlift barbell because I just wanted to, deadlift slightly more. So I'd be that guy that brought the deadlift bar to the gym to, slightly improve my conventional deadlift. But yeah, COVID lockdown happened. What am I going to do? I still want to lift. So I've got to try to just make it work with a barbell. I got some bumper plates, and that was that. And I already had some exposure to the old time lifts. I've read about this stuff. I'd done a few things here and there. I'd done some one hand snatch, some one hand deadlift, some zerchers, but I never really treated them as something to actually train. It was just it was an ego lift. And I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a term of abuse. I don't think that's necessarily a super negative thing, but the way I was using them was not. I was getting some value out of them certainly, but it wasn't the most productive way. It was kind of just, let's just do a 1 rep max zercher out of the rack. Nothing wrong with that, but if that's all you do, you're not really going to get that much out of it. Let's just max out on one hand deadlifts. It was just kind of for fun. I wasn't really training them seriously. But I had, in the back of my mind, I knew that these old time guys were doing a lot of really cool stuff with, very limited equipment. So when COVID lockdown hit, at least I kind of had an idea of where to start looking, and searched around, started finding this stuff. I guess you know about USAWA?
Not really, no.
It's like all around weightlifting. It's actually it's basically a competition where they have just all the lifts you see me doing and tons more. They've got stuff I've never heard of. I think they've got stuff in their rule books that they don't even do. It's like it's kind of ridiculous. There's something called the somebody mile or something. It's like you have to put 100% of your or 150% of your body weight on a bar and then walk a mile with it. It's in the rule books, but none of them have ever done it. No one's ever done it. And they don't think it's possible. I'm not really sure why they have lifts that they haven't done. And anyway, it just goes to show they like everything's in there. The Kelly snatch, all of this stuff is, and like tons more, just really weird things, right? So some of them are still doing that. I found some of them. I actually found some video. I'd read about some of this stuff. Like I'd read about Arthur lifts. You know what the Arthur lift is?
The Arthur lift? What? Describe that one again.
That's the one where it's basically a continental clean and jerk behind the back. So you're starting out in the behind the back deadlift, bouncing it up your back, and then jerking it behind the neck. Yeah. I'd read about Arthur Saxon doing that, but it made no sense to me. Like, how is that possible? That just the descriptions of it is like, what even is that, right? But then actually seeing it, it's like, okay.
It's funny because a lot of these lifts, I feel like if you just went to a typical commercial gym and you did this, people would probably post you on some sort of gym fail video if they saw you doing some of these weird moves.
Oh yeah. Gym Fail Nation has posted a couple of mine, and they do really well.
They posted a couple of you?
Yeah, I mean, they don't just post gym fails. I think generally the reception's mostly positive, but I think my one hand deadlift videos tend to take off. People like those, or hate them, but it gets a strong response either way.
Damn, I'm kind of curious. Like before COVID hit and you had to kind of switch to this new thing, were you just doing kind of like typical bodybuilding stuff, barbells, dumbbells? Were you doing any machines like leg press or hack squat or anything like that too, or not really?
I didn't use a whole lot of machines. I did some machine work, definitely not leg press. I've never liked the leg press. Mm-hmm. My first back injury actually was on the leg press. This is way back in my college days, first year. I didn't know about squats or deadlifts back then. I'd always been told growing up, just lift with your legs, not your back. So I was just trying to, train I knew from judo that I had to train my legs, to be strong, but I was under the impression I wasn't supposed to ever use my back. So I was just trying to leg press to, get a good leg workout. And I felt that pop, got that, disabling back pain. And that lasted for a very long time because at that point, you've always heard once you hurt your back, you're done. I thought I was done. I thought I would never be strong again. Right. And I'd never done any kind of lifting with my back really. So I just let that thing fester and I accepted that I was crippled for about a year until I just got fed up with it and said, I'm already hurt. I mean, I can't get hurt anymore. Let me just start training. And then that fixed it. And, a couple of years later, I was deadlifting 600 when
Yeah,
But
let's
yeah,
go.
I've never liked leg press, even without the back pain issues. I just can't. I don't get a good feel. I don't like the bar path. I really do like them with a barbell. It's much more natural. Your legs can go where they want to go. You get a lot more mobility. You really feel your feet and a lot of stabilizer muscles working in there that you don't feel on the machine. I'm not saying it's better than squats. I mean, squats are kind of king for a reason, but it's a cool accessory exercise. The only reason I don't do it more is just because it's so reliant on a 1 rep max floor press, and that's not something I always want to do. But it's a cool movement on the barbell, and that's how they used to do it back in the day. And I mean, they would have their buddies lift the bars up for them, so they would sometimes do incredible amounts. I mean, you hear about some of these guys doing like 600, 800 on a bar, not on a leg press. Most I've done is 315 for I forget how many, maybe 20 or so. But that's just because it's limited to what I can put on my legs.
Mm-hmm.
And just while I'm on it, it's the reason. Like that's actually the reason why Olympic plates are set up to be the height they are, so that it falls on you, you're not going to get trapped under it. I mean, I'm not that broad across, so
it's not going to cut your head off or something.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a really big barrel chested guy, it might cause a problem. For me, I might get a slight bruise, but then it's going to stop and I'm going to be fine. But really, you have so much control with your feet. It's just so easy to angle your feet and push it off to the front. It's not an issue. I don't know why people are. I mean, I can see why people might think it's scary, but when you actually do it, you have so much control. It's not really an issue.
I want to go into the you had some back issues, and there's been people who have commented. I've gone through a lot of your content, and people will be like, "Oh, come back when I'd like to see you how your back's feeling in a few years or whatever." Always thinking that you're going to hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've also experienced not necessarily like an acute back injury, but I've experienced chronic back pain for quite a few years, which I've alleviated through just not being scared to work my back. And even just working through like, spinal flexion, not worrying about rounding your back. The idea of that Zercher deadlift where you're quite rounded and then you come up. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, that's gonna break your back." Like, we have a very everyone's very there's a fragility mindset around some of these movements. Like, but what's your counter to that? Like, do you think a lot of these people are over where do you think the actual danger in spinal flexion is? And do you think it's even dangerous?
It can be. So on the Zercher deadlift, I'm not one of these people that's just going to tell you just I'm not bashing boobs here, but I'm not just going to be like, it's a mindset, just go Zercher deadlift, right? The Zercher deadlift can definitely be dangerous if you're not prepared for it. Like you won't have seen me max out on the 2-arm Zercher deadlift until well, I still haven't really maxed out like 1 rep max, but you won't have seen me push myself on it until very recently because I didn't really have the mobility for it to be safe for me. If it's I mean, like 2 years ago, I couldn't get into position for it at all. I couldn't even force myself into that position because I didn't have the mobility. So obviously, I wasn't going to Zercher deadlift then. Once I gained the mobility, it was still kind of hard to force myself into that position. That didn't feel particularly safe, and it wasn't something that I felt comfortable pushing. Now that I've worked on my mobility, and that's kind of easily within my active range, I'm not having to pull myself deep into that into the start position. Now it feels very safe. I don't feel like I'm in any kind of danger from that, right? So that's so it's not. I'm not just saying just go ahead and do anything that you want. You're not going to get hurt, but I mean that's kind of the consideration. Is what you're trying to do within what your joints can do? So yeah, I think Zercher deadlifts are definitely good for just strengthening your back and making sure you don't get injured once you're at the point where you can actually safely get into position. Now, as far as round back lifting in general, I don't think that it's generally going to be dangerous. Like Zercher squats, you can still round your back on those. It's just not as extreme a range of motion. And I've never had the slightest issue from those because I mean, almost anyone will. That's going to be within the active range of almost anyone. I mean, if you can't get into those positions, you really need to work on something, and that's going to strengthen your back and make it harder to injure within those ranges. I think doing the Zercher squats helped me to be, more resilient even before I was also incorporating mobility, because I used to be very inflexible. So I would be pretty bulletproof within kind of a limited range, but then you get outside that range and problems happen. So what would I say kind of in general to people that are concerned about backs? Well, I got injured. I got low back injuries a lot more before I started training the way I am now. Like I said, my first injury was on a leg press machine, and it wasn't even the plate loaded ones. It was one of those little ones with the with the pins. So if your bottom line, if your muscles and tissues aren't prepared to handle whatever load you're putting on it, you can hurt yourself even if you're not even training the low back. There was one time I did CrossFit for a year, and there was one time that I managed to get that devastating pop and not be able to walk the next day doing thrusters with 75 pounds. Like, yeah. Sure. And at that point, I'd already deadlifted 600 pounds, and I managed to get that devastating low back injury with 75 pounds on thrusters. But the issue with that was we'd done handstand push-ups before, and I had and kind of still have a terrible back extension ability. Well, I guess it's not my back. It's not my back that's the issue. I have tight hip flexors, so I tend to overuse my back. And also at that time I had pretty terrible lat mobility. So basically, both of those things are conspiring to make me use my back in ways that I'm not supposed to do on handstand push-ups. So you put it in a stressful position there, and then even a 75-pound thruster can hurt you because you, again, are trying to force yourself into positions that your body isn't able to go into. So yeah, like silly stuff like that can hurt you if you're not ready, right? And I've had a lot more injuries back when I was training in a more conventional way. I guess you would say I was training more of a powerlifting style, mostly the big three: squat, bench, and deadlift. And I get a lot more injured there because basically I was just trying to keep pushing myself on the same things, and my body would say no, and I would say, well, yeah, but I really want to, so let's hit this anyway. And wouldn't you know it, I'd get hurt. And I'm not saying those exercises are dangerous in general. Just if you keep pushing on something and you're not listening to your body saying no, you're going to get hurt. And I think when you have all your ego invested in just 3 lifts, you're going to be more likely to just keep asking more of those lifts and keep wanting those 3 things to, satisfy your ego, when in fact your body really needs a break from the particular stress you're putting on it, but maybe it could do something else just fine. So when you kind of, broaden the lifts that you are ego invested in, you have a lot more avenues, to train productively and push yourself without just hammering the same thing over and over and over again and ultimately getting into it. And so, yeah, I mean, I've had minor tweaks here and there, but I haven't gotten injured nearly as often since I started training this way. And most of it's been a little bit less severe as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see like just would you say that when you felt like you had plateaued, did a lot of that stem from boredom? Because, I don't think I could do like the conventional lifts just over and over and over again. At some point I would get very bored.
I mean, I wouldn't say boredom necessarily, because if I could have gotten my conventional lifts, to higher weights, that would have been super exciting, right? I mean, if I could have, increased my PRs, that would have still been awesome, if I could have benched 405 in a legit manner, that'd be super cool. I made one attempt at it years and years ago, got ruined by an overzealous spotter. I'm not saying I would have gotten it. And if I did get it, it would have been like with my ass off the bench. It wouldn't have been powerlifting legit. But yeah, if I could have hit better numbers, it would have been exciting. But I just hit the wall on them. And that's not to say. I mean, I think those numbers are probably fairly close to my potential, but I think like with conventional deadlift, I think I could definitely 600 isn't my absolute max. I'm sure I could go a little bit higher, but it's not going to be up to 700. So at a certain point, you don't have that much play in your lifts, and if you just keep pushing the same 3 lifts, you're going to not make progress, and then that becomes boring.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about injury, like if you're just doing the same kind of movements over and over again without adding variety, that's when you overstress certain tissues.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, people get injured just by typing on keyboards. If they just type on keyboards too much, they get carpal tunnel or whatever.
yeah,
So if you do too much of almost anything, you can injure yourself. But on the flip side, you can do almost anything without injuring yourself if you do it cleverly. Check this out. Have you seen my Kelly snatch?
I believe so.
It's
Which one? What is
the really weird looking behind the back snatch. You're doing like a bent over behind the back snatch.
that like for your? You say it's a really good one for your shoulders, right?
Yeah, it really is. Especially if you're prone to bicep tendonitis, which I am, it gives you kind of a stretch in that extreme position, but at the same time you're having to exert a lot of force and stabilization. It works really well. People are always telling me I'm going to get injured, and I kind of did. You know what the injury was though? Never going to guess. It was just overuse, kind of almost the arthritis feeling, just overuse in my fingers because I guess swinging the bar in that particular way just is a little bit stressful on the fingers, and it's awkward to use hook grip. So because I was doing it so much I was trying to do it before everything to get my shoulders squared away for everything else I was doing. Like it actually gave me a little bit of inflammation in my grip. So that's the injury that I got from Kelly snatch. Just goes to show, like, you can do, if you do too much of anything all the time, it can cause problems. But even some more extreme things, if you're, programming them more intelligently, you can, prosper from it.
You know what? You know what's interesting about the way you train too is there's not a lot of guidance of how to set up your program. Like if I were to start training like you tomorrow, I would have no idea how to set up a program that would make sense.
Yeah, that's the thing, because these guys left behind books and articles, but there's not nearly as much. It's not nearly as much about exactly how they set it up as, obviously, with later styles. And a lot of it I don't think is necessarily workable for a lot of us anyway. I know with a lot of the top guys like Saxon, Gorner, they were training. I think they were training most every day, not to failure, because at the end of the day they were performers, so they couldn't really just blitz their muscles and just get absolutely destroyed, do 20 rep breathing squats and be destroyed for the rest of the week because they had to perform. So I guess they were constantly practicing, tons, very time intensive, not something worked obviously, but it's probably not workable for a lot of us. So I certainly don't train like they do. I've just had to kind of plug in these exercises into training methods that I was already familiar with and just try to make them work. You definitely have to experiment more. It's not going to be perfectly laid out for you. And maybe at some point, if this stuff becomes more popular, somebody's going to do that. It's not going to be me, because I'm not the programming guy. I'm not a trainer. Yeah, I've trained a bunch of friends and stuff, but I've never really sat down and written programs for people, because I have my own program, but it's very loose. It's very flexible. It's like writing down somebody's program. It's not like I'm just doing things at random. I'm using, progressive overload. I have like a, loading scheme that I'm using, but it's like putting that on paper and saying like, this is the guide to, how you do an old time strongman routine would be. I would want somebody with a little bit more experience actually writing any kind of program. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's totally fair. I'm actually pretty curious about the Zercher deadlift in particular. You were talking about you wouldn't tell anybody just to like go gun ho on that right away. Like what are some things like someone could do to prepare for that movement? Just start with the bar, Jefferson curls. Like I'm curious.
Jefferson Curls, exactly.
Yeah.
That's 100% what I would recommend. and you can do them the way I like to do them with in the Zercher style. The reason I do it like that is pure convenience, because that way you don't have to have anything to stand on. If you're doing Jefferson curls and more of a deadlift hold, then you're going to have to find something to stand on. So that's, extra setup time. You have to go, bring whatever it is you're going to stand on, or try to use small plates.
So
or whatever.
you can use the Zercher grip, and then you can just, you got that extra range of motion.
Yeah. So I mean, when I demonstrated Jefferson curl, it's always going to be Zercher, just because that's what's convenient for me. But I mean, I guess the more standard method would be a deadlift grip. Just, I'd have to go find something to stand on. I don't want to do all that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, whatever works. It was demonstrated in Alan Calvert's Super Strength, which is one of the best kind of textbooks of weightlifting from the 20s, with a small dumbbell. And he actually recommends the Jefferson curl as kind of a beginner's exercise, and I do too, honestly, because his rationale is that it's going to prepare the spinal erectors for heavier weightlifting, so that you're not going to get hurt later on. And I completely agree. But he's demonstrating it with a very light dumbbell. I think he's recommending, that a reasonably fit, healthy man start with, like, I think 15 to 20 pounds. So we're not talking heavy weights here, and that's something I want to emphasize. When you're getting into kind of these strange range movements, we're not trying to go out there and ego lift, or it's a mindset. Just yell everywhere, turn on the metal, and just get into it. Like no,
different kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like anything. That's the thing. Any of this stuff can be safe if you start light enough, and obviously you make sure that your body can actually get into the positions you need to. People always think everything I do is so dangerous. Well, I'm not recommending that you guys do the weights that I'm necessarily doing. I may have been practicing this lift for years, and so obviously you're not supposed to do a Kelly snatch with 135 pounds, because, well, you can't. I mean, you haven't. It took me 2 years to work up to that. So, or like 1 year of consistent practice. So obviously But I mean, am I gonna just post like the lightest warm up weight that I do, or am I gonna post the peak weight? I mean, everyone posts peak weights on their Instagram. No one's gonna deadlift and they're gonna show you their first warm up set with 135, and they're not gonna show you their 700-pound deadlift. So it's like just.
Yeah. So what, everyone's obsessed with strength standards, but for these kinds of movements, it's like, what would be a reasonable, percentage of your body weight to work up to with a Jefferson curl?
Jefferson curl.
Or a Zercher deadlift, just any of these, these different kind of like full ROM spinal flexion movements. How heavy should you go? Like, let's say I go in tomorrow and I just start with the bar. I just start with a 45-pound bar, and I just, how many reps should I be doing, and what should the progression look like, and where should I kind of cap the weight off at? Like, can you just keep going heavier and heavier and heavier until eventually you're doing a couple hundred?
I mean, especially with the Jefferson curls, now Zercher deadlifts are more of a strength move, so they're going to be it's going to be a little bit different story with them. With the Jefferson curl, I mean, it's less about weight and more about stretch. I mean, this is an old time movement, but the people that have kept it alive aren't weightlifters. They're gymnasts, or people that need to be super flexible. So it's more of a stretch. So really, I mean, the emphasis isn't so much on sets or like reps or weight. The emphasis is more on what's going to get you that deepest stretch. So that's kind of a balancing act. You want to find a weight where you're strong enough that you're not risking injury by getting into too aggressive a stretch with it, because I mean, stretching it's no joke. It's not like you're just doing yoga and you're never going to get hurt. If you're too aggressive with stretching, you can hurt yourself just as easily as with a heavy barbell. And I found that out because I think that I have a bulletproof back because I can do such and such in a rounded position. I can hop 400 pounds up my back. I can, Zercher squat 500 for reps. So I have to have a bulletproof back, right? Well, no. When I start pushing myself into positions that I haven't been in before, I can still get injured just as easily as the next guy. I've had some minor tweaks here and there from stretching enough to respect it and say like, okay, you got to take this stuff seriously. Don't push too far, right? So it's so yeah, it's going to be kind of a balancing act between weight and good stretch. I mean, good stretch is kind of the priority, but you are also trying to you are trying to strengthen your muscles. That's kind of the point of the weighted stretch. It's not just being in that position, it's building strength in that position. So that's kind of the balance. And like heavier weight will help pull you into a deeper stretch, but it can also at a certain point put you at more risk. So the main thing is just to progress really slowly on this stuff, and you'll build the experience with it that'll help you determine what the best weight is. Like I started Jefferson Curls with just the empty bar, and I was smart enough to post at that time. I have a post on my Instagram up saying start with the empty bar about Jefferson Curls, and that was a smart thing to do. And yeah, I just worked up with it really slowly and really progressively. It took me quite some time to even get up to like 100 pounds or 135. I was just really, really slow and methodical about it, never pushing. And, after long enough, I was able to, comfortably put on some heavier weights, but just don't rush this stuff and just kind of prioritize getting a good stretch.
What did you notice, like, as far as benefits from the Jefferson curl after you'd gotten stronger and, got up to like the bigger weights you were doing? What kind of carryover did that have? Did you feel like your low back was a lot more bulletproof, mobile, and strong? Could you?
Yeah, definitely. It had carryovers to static stretching. That's most. I mean, I do static stretching, but that's mostly how I built up the ability to do a palms to floor pike, which is just like a toe touch where you're touching your palms to the floor. Like I said, I didn't previously have the ability to get into the full Zercher deadlift start position without really pulling myself in. I could actually, I could do I could get into the one arm position, the one arm Zercher deadlift position a lot easier. So back in the day, you'll see me maxing out on the one arm Zercher deadlift before I would ever max out on the two, just because it's not stretching you out as much. So that was comfortably within my active range. When I was comfortable like doing 315, on the one arm Zercher deadlift when I wouldn't have been comfortable maxing out on the two arm version, which is going to be counterintuitive for some people, but I can comfortably get in that position. I have strong stabilizer muscles. That's not the issue. Anyway, so yeah, the Jefferson curls helped me to be able to assume that position really easily without having to warm up and just work my way into the position. Okay, now I can. So that's kind of the main thing I noticed. Like things that I couldn't previously do, I can now just get to that position.
That's cool. Know what's also something that's coming to me right now is the fact that you just train with a barbell. So I'm assuming pretty much every time you train, every movement is compound. Like you can't really do much isolation work with just a barbell.
Yeah, I mean, I have some. I have some rings. Those it's still not isolation, but it lets you get a little bit closer. And if I want to do some isolation stuff, like for some rotator cuff or something like that, I could use plates and all. But yeah, it's mostly just compound movements. It's like before I got into this style of training, I was doing push pull legs. I think you say you also like push pull legs a lot, right?
Yeah, I've recently divorced myself from push pull legs. I'm doing upper lower right now because I did push pull legs for so long that I kind of felt like I needed to try something else.
Yeah, I liked it. That was just what I was used to doing. It worked best for me. So I just kind of plugged this stuff in and didn't worry too much about whether I was using the other stuff on the other days, and I felt like that worked pretty well. Like the old timers, or at least like say the 50s, by the 40s and 50s, I think full body 3 times a week was kind of the standard. That was what most of the silver era greats were getting. We're getting good gains off of. So it kind of ended up being a similar thing because each workout is going to be focused on push pull legs, but there's going to be elements of the others in it. So I'm kind of getting the focus on what I'm trying to hit, but everything's getting worked every day, which I don't try to get into the science of it too much, just because a lot of times we don't really know what the mechanisms are. We don't always know exactly why things are working, but
Yeah.
you're probably getting some, hormonal benefits from that full body work, while at the same time, having some focus on, the specific thing you're trying to hit.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it worked. It works pretty well. It doesn't really matter that much if my legs are a little bit sore. When I'm trying to hit an upper body movement that also involves the legs, it doesn't matter that much if I get some on more, if on more of an upper back focused workout, my low back is sore. It still kind of works.
And you don't feel like you actually felt like in the past when you were doing more traditional training that you got more beat up than you are now?
Definitely, 100%.
That's
Much worse.
It's interesting that a guy like you who's doing these very, I would say, are full body demanding barbell compound movements.
Well,
you think that you'd be beat up.
Well, I would agree, but I would agree in theory. Like I know why they're saying what they're saying, but that's because there's so little that is done with a barbell in a conventional gym setting. I mean, I agree. If you're only doing 3 lifts, you're going to get beat up. That's why I was beat up before. And it's not that there's anything wrong with those lifts. You'll never hear me say anything bad about the back squat, bench press, conventional deadlift. But if that's all you're doing, yeah, you're going to get beat up. And it would be the same thing. I mean, if I did nothing but Zercher squats, hack deadlifts, and floor press, I would get beat up too. So I'm not saying those are superior options. Just if you pick 3 lifts and that's all you do, you're going to get beat up. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know how some of these. Well, I know how these people are making it work. They're finding variations of these exercises to kind of work around it. Maybe if you can like add bands, add chains, change the angle, change the height. I mean, there are ways around it, but I think in a lot of cases, especially if you're not training as a power lifter for powerlifting competitions, maybe a better way to add that variety would be to add like more variety.
What is that movement you do where it's like a windmill? It's like a windmill movement, but you're doing it with a barbell, like the bend over. Like I don't know what that's called.
Oh, okay. Where it starts at my shoulder, and that's
like
the bent press. That's
press,
the king of the old time exercises.
Yeah, that's something. The reason I'm interested in that one is that seems like a really good QL oblique movement. It's like working all your core on this side, which is something I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good for that, but it takes a lot of investment, man. It's I can't really do it properly. Like that's it's kind of the king of the old school movements, but it's also extremely tough to get into. Like it gives you tremendous potential. I mean, Arthur Saxon did like 370 in that manner. That's like a one arm overhead lift with 370, right? It's absolutely bananas, And there were a couple of guys that could do it over 300, but it requires just so much mobility. Like when I first started it, I couldn't do the empty 45-pound bar. I had to just put 20-pound plates in my gym bag. Just do my gym bag with like maybe 20 pounds in there because I just couldn't assume that position. I realized I still can't get into that position properly. I've done 145, but I'm still not really doing it exactly right. What I'm doing, like we talked about earlier, I'm kind of having the wrong stuff I'm using the wrong joints to do things that other joints should really be doing. My hip mobility isn't really that good yet. I'm working on it, but I can't really bend. If you see people that are really good, they're going to pretty much have their let me get a position where you can see they're going to have their elbows kind of pinned on their sides, and they're just going to be rotating their torso pretty much. I guess your shoulder line kind of perpendicular to the ground, and they're just kind of pushing up at the hips. It requires a lot of hip mobility. What I found that I was doing is bending further back at the shoulder than I needed to, and kind of using the shoulder to do something the hip really ought to be doing. So it was making it work. I mean, I'm still, getting the principle of using bending at the waist to lever weight up, because obviously I can't push 145 pounds overhead with one arm.
No.
But it's not really where it needs to be. Do you follow Lucien Crotor, the big Romanian guy?
No, I do not.
He's a great fault. Like, if you think the stuff that I do is cool, well, he does what I do, but better. He's this big Romanian guy.
How do you spell his name?
Lucian. It's like Silviu or Sil something.
What's
Let me
his
see if
last?
I'll try to send him to you.
Oh, I think I got him here.
My bad. I think I exited the chat, but
That's
I
all
had to
good.
get you guys' profile. Anyway, he does these lifts, except he's really good.
Damn.
Definitely a lot stronger.
I'll check this guy out.
I mean, unfortunately, he's Romanian, so his English isn't that good. Really nice guy, but I have to talk to him through Google Translate. Another guy who's got a really good bench press is Grayson Strange. He goes by Strange Grayson on Instagram. Really good follow because he's American and he's really smart when it comes to just getting every one of your joints to do what it's actually supposed to do. So exactly what I was talking about with the bench press, just getting the hip to do what it's supposed to do, the spine to do what it's supposed to do, shoulder to do what it's supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And when you put all those pieces together, they can do really good things. Like he's done 185 on the bench press and it looks pretty. So definitely a good person to follow. He does a lot of this old time stuff too. And, and he's very, like I say, very savvy on just getting this stuff to actually work right. He and Lucas Aaron, Range of Strength, they do an old time strength podcast, so they're both really good follows on this stuff. But I definitely recommend trying to get into bench press, but just understand it's going to be a process, man. It's going to be one of the slowest but ultimately most rewarding lifts to progress on.
That's cool.
Like you might. What's that?
Oh, sorry to cut you off. Do you think, like, in general, like modern fitness has done it's a disservice that we've kind of like thrown out a lot of this old school stuff?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And
I want to go into that a little bit, like how modern let's just say in the context of bodybuilding, like where have we gone wrong? Like, do you think we should kind of go back to a lot of that?
Give me 1 second. Let me get my charger so I can plug my.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the main focuses of that I try to put out there. Yeah, I do think that's the case. As far as modern bodybuilding, I mean, it's kind of its own thing. I don't want to bash it too much because there are going to be some people that want to just go out there and be freaks, and they're, to them it's worth the risk of dying in your 20s, and like if you might die in your 20s. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is somebody who's 18, 21 really mature enough to make that decision? No, I guess so. Maybe I don't want to say that, but bottom line, it's going to be something that some people do, right?
Yeah,
it's just its own thing. In a lot of ways, it's just totally disconnected from what happened before or anything that I do. It's just a whole different ballgame. But I do think it's going to be something that just is what some people want to do. The problem is a lot of people get funneled into that because they just don't see other options. The thing with modern bodybuilding, and to a much lesser degree modern powerlifting, is they just don't work when the drugs are not added. If you train, and I used to train at Gold's Venice, and before that Powerhouse in Chatsworth, some of the biggest bodybuilding gyms in the world. I mean, I've seen what these guys do, unless they're coming in at like 3 a.m. Doing their secret hardcore workouts that I've never seen. I see what these guys do. I'm not bashing them. I'm not. What they're doing works for them. It meets their objectives. But I can say that if natural guys train like that, they're not going to get that far. A lot of it is just fairly light isolation work, stuff on machines, just stuff that, from my experience and from the experience of a lot of the people that you've had on, everyone's going to fall in various places on this, but I think we would all generally agree that a lot of that stuff doesn't work as well for natural guys as progressive overload on more serious compound exercises, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, if that's all you're seeing and you're natural, I mean, you're going to get black pilled, and you're going to want to either just quit or hop on the sauce. And I think a lot of people are hopping on the sauce just because they don't see alternatives. And I mean, like if that does end up being just the thing that you want to do, that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but it is what it is.
Is what it is.
I mean, people do all sorts of things, and if you like that really is your passion, I don't want to take it away from you. I mean, there's something to be said for somebody that really is just does want to go to extremes and just wants to do the thing
Mhm.
regardless. I mean, like I watch pro strongman sometimes, and I think it's cool to see guys deadlift 500 kilograms, although they're usually smart enough to like slim down really quick afterwards. But yeah, so if you want to do that, that's cool. But I think there are other options, and they're not being seen. And I think with a lot of this, let's see, do I disagree with a lot of other people that we've really advanced in training. I think we found ways to optimize training for that type of athletes that are training now. I don't think that modern training necessarily is any better for natural lifters, and I think that the people back in the day kind of figured out what worked for them. As far as bodybuilding goes, I think silver era is kind of the peak.
Yeah.
Those,
I've been really into that. There's this YouTube channel, the Golden Era Bookworm.
yeah,
And I've watched a lot of his videos, and I've been trying to like learn as much as I can about the Silver Era guys. And it's like those dudes looked amazing. Like, what were they doing? They were like the peak to me. Like, that's what I'm really aspiring to be like.
yeah. They had it all pretty much nailed down by the 50s, and you'll hear conspiracy theorists that want to say that they're all on steroids. I like when I did a post that involved Hermann Gorner, the German strongman. Like there were a lot of people trying to come up with conspiracy theories where somehow Gorner was an early test subject for the Germans, creating testosterone in the 20s, and that process somehow resulted in them synthesizing testosterone in the 30s because they just can't believe that somebody could be 6'0", 245 pounds with abs and one hand deadlift 700 pounds or like all the other crazy stuff. And he had to be on steroids. Even though steroids didn't exist, maybe they were testing them on him, and that's how he was able to do that in the 20s, right?
Mhm.
And you've got these people who will tell you that Steve Reeves and all the other guys were on gear too, but it's sorry, it doesn't match up. It's not there's no record of gear being used by bodybuilders at that time. It was just coming into weightlifting circles, the most elite weightlifting circles by the end of the 50s. But then, I mean, you can see visually when it
Oh yeah.
got into bodybuilding. I mean, you see the change in physiques from the 50s to the early 1960s. Things. I mean, you can look at Bill Pearl and see, and I'm not bashing him. I mean, by all accounts, Bill Pearl was a great guy, but you can look at Bill Pearl and you can see that something's a little bit different, even from phenomenal guys like Steve Reeves. You can see the difference,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they pretty. I mean, a lot of these guys, I'm sure, had a lot of like Steve Reeves. He had an amazing structure, but he knew how to train, and all these guys did.
And the way they ate too, they were very health focused. Apparently,
Mm-hmm.
like there's only so much I don't know. Like I don't know how true a lot of the accounts and history of the Silver Era guys and what they did on a daily basis, like how much of that is accurate. But it seems like they mostly ate whole foods. They bulked. They trained hard, progressive overload, and
Yeah.
all the basics. It's pretty like it's just kind of it's simple. They didn't do all these like
Oh,
biomechanically optimal exercises and whatnot.
I mean, so yeah, they didn't do the current like biomechanical like science based like weird isolation with this. Yeah, they didn't do all that, but it certainly wasn't simple. I think people underestimate the level of complexity in what they actually did. Like for example, I saw on one of Golden Era Bookworms videos about Clancy Ross recently. He's got a lot of good info that I've never even seen before. He talked about Clancy Ross at some point deciding to go on a tendon strengthening program. So where he's probably going to be doing a lot of short range, high intensity overload techniques, not necessarily to build muscle then, but just to get his structure stronger so that he can then use heavier weights and, the full range of motion stuff and put on muscle later. So they would do stuff like that. That's kind of more long-term thinking. And I mean, you kind of have this cult of bang for buck now where I think a lot of fitness content creators don't want to show anything that's not the most bang for your buck exercise that you want your beginners to be doing. Like, if you don't show anything cool or advanced, just only show squat, bench, and deadlift. Your training has to be boring, like your training is boring, right? I'm sure you've seen posts like that, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it's a little bit short-sighted because these guys weren't, I mean, in some ways it was basic, but they were also doing a lot of more, long-term thinking where this isn't necessarily going to be what puts on, the most mass on a beginner immediately, but it's going to set the stage later on down the road for, for better gains. And I think that's what a lot of the tendons, a lot of them put a big emphasis on tendon strength. I know, like John Grimek in his gym had a chain set up hanging from the ceiling where you could hang a bar in it. And the purpose of that was to be able to do heavy overhead lockouts, just like the last inch. I think Grimek would work up to like 800 pounds held overhead, right? Which is crazy overload, but that's strengthening his wrists, his tendons, his shoulders, every all the structure. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to build a lot of muscle. Although maybe it probably wouldn't hurt, but once you've done that, you're going to be able to withstand lighter loads a lot more easily and just get more of a training benefit. So there were definitely more complicated methods in use at that time than a lot of people will give me credit for.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you get into like nutrition at all, or do you talk about that at all in your content? I haven't really noticed.
I talk about it occasionally. I think, to be perfectly honest, I think nutrition is generally overrated. Not that for bodybuilding or strength purposes. I mean, I think I preach healthy eating, and I think that probably what's going to be most optimal for most people is going to be something approximating a paleo diet, just basically what we're designed to eat as human beings. But that's more for general health, and you need general health to build muscle. If you're not healthy, obviously you're not going to be able to build muscle and strength. So if you have issues with your diet that are preventing you from being healthy, then certainly you need to fix that. I think where people go wrong is in thinking that there's this going to be some magical bodybuilding diet that's going to pack mass on or whatever, and that's just absolutely not true. I was annoyed with. Have you seen the raw egg slonking thing? I know you get into kind of masculinity circles. I'm not bashing that, by the way.
No, there's a lot of silliness in this.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so the raw egg thing was kind of a pet peeve of mine before Liver King even came out. So I was already kind of primed to hate him as soon as he came out, because I was already really annoyed with that stuff. Not because I'm like a salmonella phobe. I mean, I don't have a problem with eating raw eggs myself, but it's like, stop drinking raw eggs to show that you're hardcore. Go to the squat rack, show that you're hardcore. You will not gain a single pound of muscle by eating your eggs raw. And just to be like, nitpicky about it, the most biologically optimal way to eat your eggs is to cook the white, leave the yolks raw. That way everything's peak bioavailability. So, really get your sunny side up egg.
Yeah, lightly cook your eggs.
But because there's something in the white that needs to be cooked. But either way, it doesn't matter. It just, how you cook your eggs will not add a single ounce of muscle to you. Nothing.
Yeah.
Like all this bodybuilding is 80% nutrition. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Now I think that's going to be true if you're like if you're 260 pounds ripped. If you're like someone that's not the size of a human being, obviously you're going to have to eat a different amount of food than a human being will eat. So yeah, I mean, you're not, no matter how much gear you take, you're not going to be 280 pounds shredded if you're not eating a phenomenal amount of food. So and then obviously if you're taking insulin, if you don't eat carbs at the right time, you will literally die. So for that type of bodybuilder, yes, nutrition is extremely important. And I'm not saying that natural guys should be slouches. Obviously eat as healthy as you can, because that can only help you. But like, do the specifics of what you eat affect your gains? No, just obviously just try to eat healthy foods and put all that energy that you're in, thinking about what's the most optimal way to cook your eggs, what's the most optimal this, what's the most optimal that.
Should I cook my beef liver or eat it raw?
Yeah, I mean,
I take it in I take little capsules, but
yeah, that'll work too. I mean, whatever. It's just like it's just kind of a pet peeve of mine because there's so much complexity in exercise. There's so many smart things that can benefit you tremendously just by learning. Like, I'm trying to get flexible, just kind of build my mobility up because that's kind of that's where I feel like I have the most potential to actually improve at this point. It's just increasing my range of motion and just being able to do stuff that I couldn't do previously, unlocking those ranges to train in. Mm-hmm. And there's so much stuff. Like some of the guys I mentioned earlier, Grayson and Lucas, and these guys are smart. Guys like Ben Patrick. There's so News Over Toes guy. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these people that I follow, they have so much good information. I'm learning so much all the time. There's just so much complexity in what you can do physically in terms of exercise to benefit yourself. Like, you don't have time to be worrying about your food. Just eat basic healthy foods and just, get your calories right to either bulk or cut, and don't worry about food anymore. That's it.
Mm. We're at the hour mark, so we'll wrap this up quick here, but I just wanted to ask you, what, as far as like body fat percentage, like a lot of people are kind of obsessed with that. Like, what body fat percentage should a person bulk up to versus like, does that really matter? You don't want to be you even look at some of these strong men that are like hyper flexible and super strong, but they're also packing on a lot of extra fluff.
Yeah, I mean, so that's going to be kind of an individual decision, or not decision. It's going to be kind of an individual thing based on how your body reacts. You're going to have to figure it out. I know a lot of people say that abs aren't functional, and you need to have some extra body fat to be healthy. That's definitely not true for me, and it's not true for a lot of people. I mean, your hormones are most optimized when you're fairly lean. The same factors that cause you to be lean, calorie deficit, fasting, things of that nature are good at reducing inflammation. So for me personally, I find that bulking up beyond, I would say like high teens is counterproductive. I find that I'm, generally able to gain muscle, just, pack on, just add reps to my lifts, just kind of bulk most productively from kind of the lower teens to the upper teens, but I don't like to go above that. Not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily cut into the single digits because at that point I'm just going to be stringy and weak, but I don't really lose any strength except on my bench press, getting down to the, low teens, just above, probably just above 10%. So, but I mean, to a certain extent, that's individual to me. There are a ton of people out there who can use the get big to live big strategy. I think a lot of it's gonna have to do with
it's a fun way to live because you get to eat as much as you want.
Yeah, it is, but I mean, it just doesn't work out. It doesn't work that well for me. It increases my bench and overhead press purely because of leverages, but as soon as the fat comes off, the weight comes off. I don't gain any of it, and so it's just purely leverages, and it doesn't help me to deadlift more or anything, and I can kind of feel that I'm not really benefiting. Like when I'm bulking up from a fairly lean starting point, I look better as I'm bulking. My lifts are going up consistently, and then at a certain point, now it looks like I'm just gaining fat, and at the same point, my lifts stop going up. So I think that's where I need to call it quits. But I think a lot of it's going to depend on your genetics. Like, what's your not in terms of like just I don't like to talk about genetics too much because a lot of that is just we have no way of knowing what your genetics actually are. But I mean more your bone structure. Like, do you have thick, robust joints that are going to be able to withstand the extra poundages and kind of resist any issues with inflammation? Are you kind of built for lifts that benefit from body fat? Like, if you're kind of built to be a good bench presser or an overhead presser, then probably that's going to be a good strategy for you because that's just going to enhance the things that you're good at. I mean, you're not going to see any good strict pressers or bench pressers that are lean, or not too many of them, right? Like, I mean, you'll see lean. You're not going to see like champion bench pressers that are lean, right? But when it comes to someone like me who's probably more suited for pulling or all around. I mean, my bench and overhead press are kind of mediocre. So am I really gonna, sacrifice a lot of other stuff just to be a little less mediocre on bench press? Not really. So and I mean, I think my joints are not, super heavy duty and not necessarily designed to, be carrying that much weight anyway. And also I like, just from my feelings, I don't get my T levels checked or anything, but I feel like my hormones are not as good. I don't feel the same. Just subjectively, I feel like my testosterone's down when I'm that heavy.
Cool, man. Yeah. So do you kind of eat in like a calorie maintenance for the most part? Like when I know, like, do you do like bulking, cutting cycles?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You just don't. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to cut right now because like I just had my second kid, so I don't have a lot of time right now to do the kind of consistent workouts that you need to do to actually, gain mass. I mean, you have to be fairly consistent. Just get your progress on, specified exercises to actually gain mass effectively. I can't do that right now, but my philosophy is like, you're never too busy to not eat. And I do a lot of intermittent fasting. I lean on that pretty heavily as far as cutting. So I did that with my first kid. I'm doing that now. Like, being really busy and not having a lot of time is the perfect time to just lose weight. You're probably not the optimal time to put on muscle anyway, but I can always lose fat.
Cool, man.
And, I mean, at a certain point, I'm definitely not a proponent of main gaining. That doesn't really work after a certain point. But at the same time, I think a lot of people would be better served to do more moderate, shallow bulks and cuts, not necessarily just try to put a bulk. It doesn't work. It can work for some people, but it's not necessarily optimal for everyone.
Cool, man. Wicked, man. Well, it was a good conversation. I guess we should probably wrap this thing up. We'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you just want to let everybody know where they can find you, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I go under Atlas Power Shrugged on Instagram. Same thing on YouTube. I haven't put a whole lot on YouTube recently, but that's just. I may try to focus on YouTube again, but it's just a whole different ballgame actually editing videos as opposed to making posts. I can find the time to write out. I mean, I pretty much write out blog posts on my Instagram, but even writing whole little blog posts takes less time than actually editing videos to the extent that you would have to kind of be competitive and hit the algorithm on YouTube. So I've just been focusing on Instagram mostly.
Cool, man. Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Same here.